Hello everyone. In this video, we'll discuss doing A/B deployments using in OpenShift. A/B deployments is a deployment model that is used commonly these days uh, for achieving minimum downtime of applications, where you would whenever you make changes to your application, you would want to run more than one version of the application at the same time, and then uh, switch over to the newer version of application over a period of time. Let's look at how it works. Let's say you have your application, and a version of your application is running. Let's say you deployed a version 1 of your application and it's running, and the end user is accessing this application using a URL assigned to this application, and there is a router that is front-ending. And when you let's say there are multiple instances of your application running, uh, and when the user hits that URL, the router takes care of directing the traffic to one of those instances that are running for application which is of version 1. Now, let's say you need to make changes to this application, and at that point, you introduce a changed version of this application. And in case of A/B deployments, instead of turning off the older version of your application and then switching over to the newer version, what you would try to do is run both the versions of applications at the same time, wherein you would, let's say you had 4 instances of application version 1 running, you introduce just one instance of application version 2 here, right? And now, and you will configure your router to uh, direct some of the traffic to application version 2. And if you are happy with how that version 2 is working, right, then you would increase the number of instances of version 2, your changes, and you'll gradually reduce the number of instances of application version 1. And over a period of time, uh, you would completely remove application version 1, and your application version 2 takes over from there, right? And this also allows you to actually roll back the to application version 1. If you are not happy with version 2, then you can scale down the number of instances of version 2 and increase the number of instances of version 1 as desired. So you can do the reverse effect if you wanted to, right? Now, this kind of a implementation of A/B deployments comes naturally out of OpenShift due to the way in which OpenShift itself is architected. And let's see how that can be achieved with what we have. Um, Basically, if you look at if you have understood the architecture of OpenShift in the past, right? OpenShift runs the application instances in OpenShift, or uh, any app runs inside a Kubernetes pod. So let's say your application version 1 is running, and it is running in 4 different pods, let's say, right? And those pods are front-ended by a service which groups all the pods related to this application. So let us say we have um, assigned a label to this application version 1, and we assigned a label called AB member equal to true, meaning I am going to be using an A/B deployment model for this application in the future. So make me as part of this AB member or AB group. Uh, we are just setting a random label like that. Like you can choose whatever name you want. While creating an application, we can add a labels for the service to be able to group your pods based on that label. We'll see how to do that when we are creating an app. So now the service will be configured with a selector to select all the pods that are with that label AB member equal to true, right? And when you expose this service with a route, then your router will be configured to direct all the traffic coming to your application to any of these pods which are selected by using the selector, right? Now, with this kind of an architecture being there, when you have to introduce a change to the application in our A/B deployment model, all you would do is add your version 2 application, the B version of the application, and assign the same exact label, and that's it. Your service will pick up your new parts based on the same selector that we had assigned to it before, and the traffic gets now routed between version 1 and version 2, and eventually you can just keep version 2 and remove version 1 if you're happy with version 2, right? So that's the model. Let's look at the example of how to do that in OpenShift. So now I'm logged on to my OpenShift environment on the web console. I am in a project creation screen. I'm creating a new project with name A/B deployment, and I just gave a display name and description as well. And I'll say create. This creates the new project. And now let's add an application, version A, right? So on GitHub, I have provided a sample code for this. I have a simple application. What it does is it shows that it just displays a version number, and it says where this pod is running. It displays the IP address of the pod, right? Now let's take this and deploy it into OpenShift as an application A. So I'll go back and I'll use this URL, and since this is a PHP app, I'm selecting PHP. I'll call this app A, right? And we will, since we are going to create a new service, and we will be using our own selectors, I will not create the route for now. I'll just remove the route. So I am deploying app A with no route, and we'll scale it up later. As of now, what I'll do is I'll add a label called AB group member is true, right? So now this label got added, and when I create this application, any pod that gets created would have that label applied. Now, this will take a couple of minutes for this application to spin up. In the meanwhile, what we'll do is we will use our project, C project AB deployment, and let's look at what deployment configurations exist. Now, there is a deployment configuration for app A that's already created. So let's edit that. OC edit DC. Now, if you look at this, it has a label AB group member equal to true, right? That means that any pod that gets created will get added this label. Now, what we'll do is we'll also add this to the selectors, right? So I added a selector here to this deployment config. Now, let us also add a new service to expose this deployment configuration with this change that we just added, right? So we'll add a new service, and so I'm exposing a service, the DC app A, with the name, I am assigning a name AB service, because this is a common service that applies both to application A as well as application B. So I'm calling it AB. And I mean, it's just a naming convention I'm using. There's nothing, you can call it any XYZ, it doesn't matter. And I am assigning the selector of AB group member equal to true. This is the one that we configured, right? And we are going to generate a new service. By default, when OpenShift created this application, it would have added a service. Ignore that. We are creating a new service that can that is configured to with the selector AB group member equal to true, right? So let's see if I do OC get service, you will see now there are two services. One is that app A, which was generated before, right? And there is a new service that we just added. This is what we are going to use now. This is a service that we will use to expose via our route. Okay. Now let's also create a route by using this service, right? I will expose service AB service, and I'll create a new route with the name, let's say AB route, and I'll assign a URL, a host name equal to AB deploy. Okay. Now my service is exposed via this route. In the meanwhile, the build is still running, so let's give it a couple of more minutes for it to be done. So the application is now deployed, and let's see, the build is complete. The one part of this application is running, right? So let us and if you look at the services, there is a service that was created along with the application. We'll ignore that, and we created our own service, a new service, and we assigned a URL to expose this service. Let's open this link in a new tab. So if I look at it now, my application is now running since there is a single pod which is ending with 59, right? Let me show you on the overview page. There is one pod running that is 10.1.1.59, and that's what is shown here, right? Now let's do something. Let's scale up this application. OC scale DC app A. This is I'm saying that use the deployment configuration app A and scale this application, and set the number of replicas to 4. Right? Once I do that, watch in the back. It has spun up 4 different pods immediately, and it's slowly the pods start turning into running status. Right now they are all running. Now let's do something else. We will now run. We'll put a for loop and run a curl to the same URL to see what we get, right? So the scaling is running. I did a 10-time curl to the same URL that we configured, right? It says I'm version 1, I'm version 1, I'm version 1 all the time. It is version 1, and it says it gives the pod number 59, 60, 66, 67. Look at it, 59, 60, 66, 67, and then it's load balancing the traffic. It's doing in a round robin way, like 59, 60, 66, 67. Again, the same things will repeat, right? So basically, we have an application version 1, and 4 instances of this application are running. And when we are from the client side, from my local machine, when I'm accessing this application, I am hitting all different parts, and the router is routing the traffic to between load balancing the traffic across different parts. That's what we have seen so far. Now let us do the next step. Now we'll go to the application and we'll make a small change here, right? I'll edit this file. I'll change this to version 2, right? Now, and I'll also commit these changes. I'm not asking OpenShift at this point to update app A to that new version. Instead, what I'm going to do now is create an additional application within the same project, right? And I'll use the same GitHub URL to deploy my application. I'll select the same PHP 5.5, And this time I'm calling it app B instead of app A, right? That the first one was app A, this is app B. Now I'll not create a route because we already have a route, and that will take care of this. And what we'll do is we'll just create one pod. So scaling replicas is set to 1 by default. And we'll edit the labels, and we will give the same exact group membership, AB group member. Whatever you configured in the selector for the service, that same label name should apply to these pods as well, right? So, and I'll add that. Now I'll create this app B. Now OpenShift will do the source to image process. It will go and pick up the source code from this Git repository, and it will overlay that source code on the top of the PHP image. It will create an application image, and it will then deploy that image. And that process will take a couple of minutes for that to happen. The app B is still, the scheduler is still waiting to schedule a build job. So we'll give it a minute and come back. So now the deployment of app B is complete. It's successfully built. It's pushed into the repository, and then now it is deployed, and it is running with a single pod. And that pod's IP address you can see is 10.1.2.37. Right now, let's run that same for loop again. As you can see that app A, which is the version 1, has 4 instances running, right? And app B, which is version 2 of our application, has only 1 instance running. So we should see the same kind of thing when we look at this, the output of this for loop. If you see this, right, there are 4 instances of app1 running. So with that round robin scheduling, you'll see that there is 66, 67, 59, and 60, which are the app A pods, right? Those are returning version 1. And 37, which is 2.37, which is pod belonging to version 2, is returning I am version 2, right? And then this repeats. So it's like 4 results from from the version 1 and 1 result from version 2, which is consistent with the number of pods that are running, right? To move forward with our AB deployment process, now let's say we are happy with uh, the way in which version 2 is running. So let's scale up the number of pods for version 2 and scale down the number of pods for version 1. So all I'm going to do is OC scale deployment configuration app A replicas. I'm going to reduce this to 2, right? And for app B, I'll increase this to 2. So we'll have equal number of pods of both, right? As you can see, while I'm making this change, it's happening behind this, right behind the screen, right? You are seeing that the app A has 2 pods now, and app B has 2 pods now. It took a second for those to get into the running status. Now let's run that for loop again, right? Now we should see that one result is from version 1, other result from version 2, one result from version 1, other from version 2. So it's like it's equally distributed. So you have 66, 60 returning version 1, and 68 and 37 returning version 2, right? So now let's say you are not happy with the change and you want to roll back. You can always scale the app A up. But let's assume that app B's, the changes we made for app B are good, and we can scale app A completely down. So let's set the replicas to 0. It's gone. You can see that app A, there are no pods running at this point of time, right? And for app B, we'll set the number of replicas to 4, our favorite number. Now you'll see that quickly this app B has 4 pods. Two of them are in the pending status. Now they're running. Okay. Now let's run the for loop again. Everything is version 2 now, right? So that's how A/B deployments can be achieved in OpenShift. There are some improvements that are expected in this area in terms of assigning the percentages and all, but we'll cover them when it comes to that. So that's in short the A/B deployments in OpenShift. Thanks a lot for watching the video.